about one of my favorite subjects, enterprise architecture modeling with the ArchiMate language. And so today I'm going to first give you a very brief introduction to the ArchiMate language and the Archie toolset. And then I'm going to go into a case study that we did recently for the U.S. Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, as part of their customized training. And then I'm going to do a demo of Archie, talk about what might be the next steps for you on your journey to master enterprise architecture modeling. And then we'll have time for your questions, which I certainly encourage you to insert them as you think of them into the chat. And Caitlin will monitor and manage that and pose them when we get to that time. I'm really interested in your questions. And the questions that we can't answer during the webinar we'll answer afterwards and contact you by email. So as I said, I'm going to begin talking about modeling with ArchiMate and Archie. So first of all, I'd like to talk about the approach that I'll be using. I'll be using an immersion approach, which means that I will be immersing you in the language, just as if I were to teach you a language that was not a native language for you. I might just start by talking in it and then using some words in the language that you did understand best, and then going back and forth. So you'll quickly see what's possible with and develop a feel for the language. But you won't actually, this isn't exactly the same as an EA principles training, for example, where we would systematically go through all of the concepts and details in order and give you exercises. But my goal here is not to train you so much as to motivate further study and use of ArchiMate and architectural modeling in general for initiatives that are important to you. So I'm going to do this. I'll make this as easy as possible by explaining each type of symbol that I use and providing lots of visual cues, but I'll focus on getting a sense of what I'm presenting rather than memorizing what I say. And towards the end of the hour, I'm going to go over some great options for learning architectural modeling with ArchiMate and getting the conceptual foundation for that as well. So this is the ArchiMate full framework. It's called that because when I started using it 10 years ago, there was a core framework that consisted solely of the business application and technology layers. Then the motivation layer, the motivation aspect, and the implementation and migration layer was added on. And then later on, the strategy and physical layers, the strategy layer and the physical elements were added as well. And I was really happy to be part of the language and contributing to it during that period of expansion of the language. So the layers and the motivation aspect tells you all of the aspects of socio-technical systems that ArchiMate models. And the way to think about this is that motivation is why, strategy is the means to an end, how we get there. The business talks about the structure and function of the business organization that we are analyzing or planning. The application layer are essentially the running applications, the available data, etc. It corresponds roughly to what you would call a logical architecture, while business is conceptual, since it's in the terms of the user. And then in the technology, that is logical and physical as well. And ArchiMate isn't just for IT, as you'll see. It can be used to model supply chains, manufacturing processes, etc. And implementation migration is about the program and project management that it takes and tying that in to particular deliverables and realization of the desired state of the organization and its information, its people, its processes, and its technology, of course. And motivation goes through all of those and tells us why. So another important thing about the language is the difference between passive structure, active structure, and behavior elements. You can think of these as the subject, verb, and object in a sentence. An active structure element behavior on a passive structure. For example, an application component accesses a data object, or which could represent a file or a database of information or a claim record or something like that. And so you have that subject, verb, object pattern. And so moving on, we're going to jump right into a scenario that uses all ArchiMate layers and aspects, although not every layer and every aspect in every layer. And so think about this. Due to increased competition based on customer experience, the CEO has asked for an industry-leading digital customer experience, or CX. The organization responded by proposing a new continuously available customer portal. So starting from the upper left of the diagram, you see a driver, part of which is increased competition based on customer experience. And then you see that driver influencing, that's an influence relationship, the CEO. And then you see the CEO influencing a requirement called industry-leading digital CX. How did he do that? By saying, I want it. And then you see a course of action that realizes that requirement called provide new customer portal. Realization is a very important relationship in ArchiMate. It means when you take something that's more concrete and use it to bring about something that's a little more abstract and conceptual. And so here you have a course of action fulfilling a requirement. And below it, you have a program called Customer Portal Business Transformation, realizing the course of action. Again, more concrete, more abstract. And what you're doing here is what you're doing here is you have a work package, and the work package is you have a larger work package called a program that contains another work package called the Customer Portal IT implementation, which in turn realizes the Customer Portal solution, which I've made a grouping of, which is cloud-based infrastructure, realizing a portal application that serves the customer. And then what you have here is data centers in a grouping located in 2 US states, Ohio and Utah, that have a facility, and there's a facility which is a data center in each of those things, moving into the physical level. That in a different model, that could be a factory or a warehouse. That realizes a cloud-based infrastructure, which I've modeled as a node, which in turn realizes the portal application. Moving on, we're going up a level to the business strategy level. And here what we're doing is modeling capability-based planning tied to valued outcomes and service orientations, okay? And so what you see here is a focus on strategy, where at the bottom you have different organizations, which is a digital solutions department with 2 sections in it, IT, web and mobile, and infrastructure group, which together realize a resource called a cross-functional virtual team, which is assigned to the capability called digital experience delivery, which itself serves 3 value streams: partner experience, customer experience, and employee experience, and serves a course of action called Develop Industry-Leading CX, which realizes a valued outcome. This is called Digital Experience Recognizes Industry-Leading, and Service Orientation, which is an assessment of here, associated with the three value streams. And here, I generally provide legends in most of these diagrams. And again, I don't expect you to memorize all of this. You have plenty of opportunity to learn this. Also note that I'm using the default colors that are in the specification, but you will see that you can change these colors. I'm just leaving them in most cases this way, so that you get a sense of what the language is like and how diagrams tie together. And so now I'm going to take a step back from that rapid introduction to the language to talk about what is architectural modeling. So as I see it, the key, what different about modeling is that there's shared information that's used in a variety of representations. Here on the left, I have the three types of representations specified in the TOGAF Enterprise Architecture Specification: diagram, catalog, and matrix. And then I have here some other ones: graph, mixed dashboards, other representations, etc. And I'm showing read-write access to a generic, what I'm calling interactive and static interfaces. Notice that in ArchiMate, the symbols can represent concepts that are singular and plural, and at the same time. So there's really not that concept of cardinality when you're modeling this way. Those interactive and static interfaces to these representations, that shared information, are used for model development, model consumptions, looking at them and using those models, and model collaboration. And those are business functions. Now, you may ask, well, I'm an architect, I draw lots of diagrams. What is the difference between diagramming versus modeling for enterprise architecture? And so here I have a comparison. We've already said that the key to architectural modeling is shared information. And what I've done here is I've used the influence relationship with varying strengths, as you can see by the plus and the minus, to show positive or negative influence on a goal that you may have, in your architectural work. There is, and this is my comparison. I know that it's probably controversial, but it's totally subjective. It's, I say that for planning socio-technical systems, I would say that architectural modeling is stronger because of the reasons that I've discussed. And let me just diverge for a second. I use the word socio-technical systems. As enterprise architects, we're responsible for guiding the evolution of socio-technical systems. And what I mean by that is systems that involve people, process, information, and technology, and also interact with aspects of the natural world, such as climate and resource availability, geography, etc. So what I'm asserting here is that architectural modeling is stronger than, is a stronger technique than architectural diagramming in most areas, except for purely maximizing visual impact. Clearly, if you can use free-form expression, which I've modeled here as a value, associated with architectural diagram, you can, you're an artist, you can make anything look any way that you want it to. And so that's why I've said that if you just need to maximize visual impact, draw some diagrams, and they could be based on your models. And both are, but architectural modeling has the value of consistent expression and also machine readability, since generally models are increasingly in standard formats. The ArchiMate language, for instance, has a model file format that is a standard just like the language and can be used, as I have, to transfer models between different tools. And finally, on the bottom here, you see that I'm using the aggregation relationship to show that architectural modeling includes diagramming, since a diagram is a type of view, and that an architectural diagram can include a model. There's nothing stopping you from presenting an entire model on a, with different views and all of its data on one big poster. And that's good for visual impact too. Now, what about ArchiMate? You know, you may say, well, why do I have to learn another modeling language? I learned UML, perhaps I'm a software engineer. There are all kinds of things. But ArchiMate complements other architectural modeling languages. It's a general purpose language that spans and aligns other disciplines, connects more detailed and specialized work done with such languages as UML for software engineering, SysML and the IDEF family for systems engineering, ERD, entity relationship diagrams, BPMN, for process modeling, DMN for business rules. So, you know, and it's also an international standard with increasing and already substantial tool support. It allows you to take the same base of information and create adaptable visual representations for different people with different skills and interests. And it allows you to connect different work done in different areas, and the language itself is extensible across business and technical domains. And we will talk about that. You'll see some extension in some of the diagrams that I present going forward. So what about Archie? Why are we talking about Archie? Well, Archie is an ArchiMate modeling tool that's open source. It's free. The core tool is free. Some of the plugins are actually available through a very inexpensive Patreon subscription that I am happy to pay in order to use these tools. And because there are really only sort of like 1.5 people working on the project, and they need some support. And it's an excellent ArchiMate implementation, and it now has a multi-user capability, which I'm going to demonstrate using the Co-Archie plugin. It's not a multi-language tool, and it's not really ready out of the box for complex enterprises and initiatives. It doesn't have the things you would need to roll into a medium-sized or large enterprise to have to be used for a lot of different things. But it's certainly a great place to get started. And because of the Archie plugin, where you can enhance the capabilities of it with scripts, there are certainly tremendous possibilities there. And here I've used one of the extensibility functions of the ArchiMate language. I've used stereotyping, which is the same essentially as UML. I have a concept here called an application component. And but I'm stereotyping it. I'm saying that it's an Archie plugin, and also to show some contrast, I'm showing it as purple instead of the default blue for the ArchiMate application level. And there's great function in Archie for manipulating your display of components through the use of labels that can use data elements from your model. And I'm also showing the main functions of Archie here, which is ArchiMate modeling, model reporting, and it also has sort of as an add-on feature, it also develops business model canvases, which you can tie to your ArchiMate model. But that doesn't really cross the boundary to me into a separate language, and that's why I said it's not a multi-language tool. But there are commercial tools, by the way, that allow you to have one namespace of objects and reference those objects in models from different languages. Archie is not that, but those tools are very expensive. So that's why we recommend that you start with Archie in your ArchiMate journey and then make it work for your organization and get some commitment to collaborative modeling before you invest in a major tool, a commercial tool. Okay, now I'm going to go into the case study. And this case study, as I said, was done as part of the customized training we did for FEMA. That's one of the things that differentiates EA Principles training. Not only do we have a standard curriculum, but we also try to make it as relevant as possible to your organization. So we work with, you, if you or the architecture leaders in your organizations, to develop a case study that's used as training material. So you're left with a product that resonates with you and is relevant right away to your organization. And that's exactly what we did with FEMA. So what this shows is some information that, quite frankly, is publicly available on their website that shows how modeling sort of the FEMA organizational strategy. That FEMA has a national preparedness goal that I modeled as a goal realized by a grouping of their mission areas. And their mission areas, again, stereotype, are value streams that show a flow of value to each other, making a greater value stream in toto. And what I've used is I've used the value concept to show how the value streams flow value to each other, how they interrelate. So, for example, the mission area of prevention flows the value of fewer disasters to protect against to the protection value stream, and so on. The other thing you'll see here is, for any of you that may be involved and work with the US government or military, is the corresponding viewpoints in FEAF, the Federal Enterprise Architecture Framework, and in DODAF, the Department of Defense framework. And what's interesting about that is that these frameworks are quite involved, and they're a particular way of looking at enterprise architecture, and they have viewpoints, but they don't have a modeling language. So part of the work that our CEO, Steve Else, who's also our chief architect, has championed is demonstrating to government and defense organizations how ArchiMate meets the modeling needs in a consistent way for these government frameworks. And so here's another diagram which shows a business organization, FEMA Region 1, again using publicly available information available on the FEMA website. And what we see here is a territory which I've modeled as a location that includes 6 US states, and also groups together, aggregates a federally recognized tribal nations for Native Americans, and which is served, not only is the territory served, but the federally recognized tribal nations in this geography are served by the FEMA Region 1 organization. And I show 2 sub-organizations that are based in Massachusetts, and they're all part of FEMA using the composition relationship here. And I show that in the legend, and I show some corresponding viewpoints here: organization chart and organizational relationships. Composition, by the way, is a stronger version of aggregation. Composition is sort of single, essential membership, where like, for instance, if a brick of wall is composed of bricks, but an individual can be present and can be a member of many clubs, for example. So the aggregation relationship would be used to show how a club groups together people, while composition might be used to show how a wall groups together bricks, or a data center groups together its racks, or an application groups together the components that are only part of that application. So now, so the cool thing about working with FEMA, or one of the cool things, was that they are piloting the SpaceX Starlink internet service, which is basically the ultimate plan is to shoot up 42,000 satellites in geostationary orbit, and they're starting with that have simple ground stations that are easy to transport and install. And and these satellites talk to each other with lasers, and they use a special type of an ion drive to position themselves with each other. It's very, very interesting and exciting technology. And what I did here was model out the motivations for doing the pilot. And what you see is, in the middle, you see an outcome. For the last few years, FEMA has deployed these things called plum cases. And it describes what the plum cases are. But what our target here, and this is showing influence relationships, is to pilot the use of the low Earth orbit broadband internet capabilities provided by Starlink. And what it basically groups together all of these motions, ties it to the FEMA disaster response mission, and also on the outside connects this to some ancillary motivations held by a stakeholder, the FEMA enterprise architect, which you can see here, which is basically to develop their enterprise architecture capability. And so there you go. Now, so here I drew out a potential pilot architecture for them. One of the things that an enterprise architect can do is propose something, so that the people, so the stakeholders can say, no, this is right, or no, this is wrong, or maybe it's usually a combination of right or wrong, but it starts that conversation. And that's why I created this. Here we have a disaster recovery facility, and we have a store, and that includes, and that hosts basically a disaster recovery center that I've modeled as a business interface, and where services are available. And so the FEMA staff member and the disaster survivor participate in a business collaboration for service selection and enrollment. And so here we have a disaster response application collaboration that they use, and they have a work, which is realized by a workstation connected to a temporary facility network, connected to the Starlink user terminal, connected to the satellite, connected to the SpaceX gateway, and ultimately connected through a particular interface to the internet. And I've modeled all of these things as nodes. It's pretty high level here, but nodes can be a combination of both physical and compute resources. I mean, a satellite is both a physical object, and it contains things that align it and propels it, and the lasers and the positions, but it also has a computing capability, making it ideal for the node in the technology layer. Now, moving along here, the last slide I have here, I think now I have two more slides here, is a pilot plan. And here, what you see is the, you see the pilot start, you see basically the implementation and migration layer. You see a pilot start, and then you see which is an implementation event, and a series of work packages for lab evaluation and field trial planning, a field trial, analysis and recommendation, etc. And then you see two of those, you see this work package realizing a set of deliverables, which in turn collectively realize the lab evaluation, where I've drawn out an architecture for that as part of the plateau, or relatively stable system state. And then this is aggregated by a field trial. And the field trial, what that is a, the field trial we're leaving the lab up. That's why I use the aggregation here, because the lab evaluation is still part of the field trial. And then we were actually piloting Starlink at a disaster recovery facility. And disaster recovery facilities, by the way, are things like an abandoned or an empty big box store or mall that that FEMA will lease very quickly and set up a place where they can deliver services to a community that's been affected by a disaster. And then here you have the analysis and recommendation and acquisition and budgeting phase, realizing deliverables, which consists of reports in different media, videos, and things like that, again, using stereotyping. So finally, here's something that doesn't really involve IT, and this is a supply network. What I did is theorize that, well, there'll probably be a user terminal factory. That's again the antenna plus the power supply that talks to the satellite, and that there's a U.S. user terminal facility and overseas Starlink user terminal facility, and those things go through intermodal networks and commercial container shipping to get to a warehouse and a logistics park where they could go via commercial air freight service or military logistics services to a disaster area and ultimately to a facility requiring internet access. And so this is an example of how you can use ArchiMate for something that's clearly in the physical world. There's also an equipment concept that I'm not using here that could actually show the manufacturing or and the whole path of manufacturing using different machines, but I'm not showing that here. So now I'm going to move on to the Archie demo. And what I'm going to do is switch gears here and go into Archie itself. So I'm going to bring that up here and bring it over here. And this is the Archie tool. And the Archie tool has a lot of very rich features. I'm not going to demonstrate all of you today because we don't have the time, but I'll just do a few very quickly. So here we have a model which is a simple model which I've called Acme Insurance, and I have basically here all the components: the strategy, business, application, technology, and physical and motivation layer. Here are the relations, and here are the views, which is more important. So one of the neat things about this is I can I can view any of my views right now, and I'm looking at the first one now. And in these views, I can select a component. And then since I have the visualizer selected here, I'll make the panel a little bigger. I can see what it's connected to. So here, I have the customer service division, which is composed of the auto and marine customer service department. And Archie has a neat feature called automatic relationship management. So if I pull this out of here, I get the relationship. When I pull it back in here, the relationship, which is represented by nesting, is still in there. So I can go to basically any component, and I can see what it's connected to. Again, I did another department, and so I'm just trying to think, is there anything interesting here to show you here? Probably in the application area there is. So here's an application, and it serves this. So here's Microsoft Dynamics CRM, and is served by the disability claim intake process. This is a simple model, so the relationships aren't all that interesting. So now, the first thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate how it works with GitHub. And it would most likely work, I haven't tested it, with any server, any version control server that uses the Git protocol so that you can version your models. So what I'm going to do is go into the is look at my branches. Okay, I have previously set this up. In fact, I'll show you. I have set up a Git repository with Acme in there, and that is the name of my model. And you can see that I did a merge there already, and everything is in a folder called model. And what's interesting about this is that instead of using one, when you have software, Git uses one file for every file you put in there. It's not, plus it has some control files and things like that. But here, what it does is it's actually a component for one file for each component. And if you look at the component files, you see the component in essentially the model file form. which is the standard format that allows interchange between tools. However, the implementation of Archie, the Archie GitHub interface is not, or Archie Git interface has not been implemented anywhere else that I'm aware of. But anyway, so I'm going to go back to my tool here, and what I'm going to do is I've not going to save that now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a change here. I'm going to change the color of these three. I'm doing color because it's very easy to it's very easy to deal with, very easy to see in this demo. And I'm going to go into the properties of this, and I'm going to change the appearance, and I'm going to make these a different color, say gray. Okay. And so I've gone there and done that, and now I'm going to commit my changes, and it'll ask me if I'm going to save it, and I'm going to just say change departments to gray. Pretty simple. And now I've committed my change. Now you're going to have to use your imagination here because I'm only one person. I'm going to go back to the branches, and I'm going to switch to the master branch. Actually, I'm on the master branch. I'm going to switch to the demo branch. And demo is highlighted. And then I'm going to change these to a different color that conflicts with that. So I'm going to go back into properties, and I'm going to go to appearance, and I'm going to make these white. Okay. And then I'm going to commit that. It reminds me to save. And I'm going to say change departments to white. I'm going to say, okay, it's going to commit it. Now, I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to say merge. Well, I'm going to switch back to my master. And I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say merge branch into current branch. So I'm going to merge into my master, which is a common thing when you're doing. And do I want to provide a local or online merge? I could do either. I'll do the online one, which will save these two branches to things. So it's publishing it to the to GitHub. It's merging, publishing to remote. Aha, it's shown me that I have a merge conflict. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to look at the view. And this is why I chose the colors. You can see whether it's, so on the main branch, it's gray, and on this branch, it's white. I think I like the white better, so I'm going to select them as white. And I'm going to say, okay. And it's merging. Do I want to delete the branch demo? I'm not going to delete it. I might have to do this demo again. And so now, but if I go to the master, it's white. And the demo is white as well. Now, so then if we look again on on here, we see that there is recent pushes, and then if we refresh this, and it says, it basically told us the merge just happened about a minute ago, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so that's one thing I'm going to show you, and now I'm going to demonstrate the scripting. So I'm going to go to, I'm going to do two things with the scripting. I'm going to show the scripts console. And the scripts are basically written in JavaScript with some additional libraries that allow you easy access to the model. I've just started to play around with this. So I'm going to go to my script manager, and I'm going to take a script that I took from a few other scripts and kind of pieced together and modified a little. The script is called list concepts, and I'm going to run it. So what concepts would I like to list? I'm going to say business actors. And if you can see here, it prints on the console. And here is each distinctively named. It lists all of them, but it doesn't list the business actors named business actor because I'm using those in legends. I'm actually going to make a more sophisticated version of this that detects whether something is used in the legend or allows you to flag it and then do it, because you should be able to do analytics without having your legends corrupt them. And you know, and that's one of the fun things about these scripts. There are a lot of things on the internet already that people have done to start making them, and it's just pretty easy to piece things together. And you can make them interactive. Now, for the second script demo that I'm going to do with you, we have I'm going to go to another view here, which is let's see. What I'm going to do is very quickly create a new view. And it's called new ArchiMate view, and I'll leave it being called that. And I'm going to drag out, and I'm going to create a capability model. So I'm going to create a couple of capabilities. And I'm going to, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to name them as capabilities. I'm going to say marketing, sales, and I'm going to say finance. Then I look at them. What's wrong with this picture? I use the wrong thing. I use resources, which are assets that serve capabilities instead of there. What if I put in 20 of these? That would be a lot of work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all 3 of them, and I'm going to run a script that I found on the internet called change concept type. So it runs it, convert from concept type resource, which is the default, which it defaults to since I selected all resources. And I'm going to change that to capability. Okay. Let's see. And then it asks me for a suffix. So I'm gonna say I want to explicitly call them capabilities. So I'm going to say, and there you have it: marketing capability, sales capability, and finance capabilities. You could see that they're using I changed the type of the concept. Okay, now that concludes the demo of Archie. And now I'm going to go back to the presentation. And so this is so now we're at the summary. So let me make this larger again. Okay, so so basically, you know, as I said at the beginning, enterprise architects guide the evolution of socio-technical systems, which, as I said, span people, information, process, and technology, not just IT, and interact with aspects of the natural world. And when we model those systems, it creates valuable data that we can visualize and analyze in varying yet consistent ways. Diagramming creates situational products with limited reusability unless that diagram is a view of a model. Then now ArchiMate, as you've seen, is a rich and rigorous language that we can use for modeling the states of socio-technical systems and the transitions between them, as we saw in the other diagram where I showed how you could show an entire program and how it changes architecture. And there are many ways of doing that through color coding, et cetera, to show things in different states in the same view or in other views besides them with plateaus. And as I said, the ArchiMate language is a general purpose language that contextualizes and unifies work that's done with more specialized and detailed modeling languages. And I, in my day job as the chief architect for Doctorkit, which is a healthcare startup, I use different languages a lot. I use UML, I use ArchiMate, etc. And one of the things, if you label your ArchiMate diagrams properly, people who are consuming them don't need ArchiMate. I also manage an engineering team of 5 people, and I've given them ArchiMate diagrams that are properly labeled and with legends, and they've figured it out. We've actually developed a lot of software that I've architected with ArchiMate. And we can customize and extend the language as necessary while preserving its underlying structure and value. You got a taste of that in the stereotyping, but there are other things that you can do as well. And the Archie toolset provides a great way to get started with the ArchiMate language and demonstrate its worth on complex initiatives, or simple initiatives for that matter. And we strongly suggest that you begin with Archie and its plugins before investing in commercial tools, because collaborative modeling requires organizational investment. Like anything that involves curated quality content, it involves processes, including review processes. It involves some sort of setting things up and managing things. And but the return on investment is well worth it, and has been shown also by research studies. So here are some resources that are on the internet. There's the ArchiMate standard, the Archie toolset, which you can download, and some of its plugins, and the rest you can get through Patreon. There's the TOGAF standard. ArchiMate is aligned with TOGAF, and so in TOGAF you'll find many of the underlying concepts in the language. EA Principles has a knowledge center. There's a SlideShare site that I've put together that has a lot of my work on ArchiMate over many years, and other interesting architecture things. And finally, there's the modeling course sequence that EA Principles offers, and it allows you to progressively build your skills. There's the combined ArchiMate 3.1 level 1 and 2 certification. The next one is coming up November 9th to 12th. And it includes discounted access to the on-demand version, which I have recorded from slides that I edited. And the on-demand version includes an hour-long personal video coaching session. You can bring your product, and most likely I would do that. And I generally also make appearances in Steve's courses focused on focused areas, and I also help him with the custom content that we develop for each organization that engages us. And then there are there are courses that I have developed, including with Steve, enterprise modeling analysis with the Archie open source toolset, and advanced enterprise modeling and analysis, which is like a 3-day course with the open source toolset. And there's also personal mentoring and coaching available. And don't forget that we have a course coming up November 9th to 12th. Okay, so now it's time for Q&A. So Caitlin, are there any questions in the queue?
Yes, we have had some questions submitted through the chat functionality. I'll run through these first, and then if we've got time for any more, people can submit or ask the questions themselves. So the first question is, looking at using Archi to support data architecture work, business domain model, vocabulary, business event model, API data models, etc. I would appreciate your view on suitability and feasibility and any examples that you may have available. Okay, there's an example. Well, I'll start with the example. There's on my SlideShare site. There's one thing on modeling. There's a big presentation on modeling big data with ArchiMate, and that has a lot of data architecture stuff in it.
In terms of detailed modeling, you would want to start with ArchiMate and then move to a tool that does the full ERD. ArchiMate has the data, has the business object, which is conceptual, the data object, which is logical, and the artifact, which is physical. And it can relate those and talk about flows. And there's a number of things that you can do. But in terms of actually designing a database at the field level, I would then take that work and use it for use a tool that had full ERD, enterprise relationship diagram capability. Next question.
Excellent. A question has just been submitted. Is Archi support ArchiMate specification 3.1?
Yes, it does. It's completely up to date. The thing that got added in 3.1 is the value stream, and you saw that. That was one of the main things. And that got, and then you saw that repeatedly in my diagrams, which were all done with Archie, by the way. And not only that, the one thing I wanted to add to my previous answer is that any data that you put in there, so if you model in Archie with data objects, you can export those and then perhaps import them into an ERD tool.
Excellent.
Next question.
Are there any other questions to be submitted, either through the chat, or we've had just one more pop up? Is ArchiMate linked to data model in a manner that changes in the data model?
In the what type of model?
Data model.
Yes.
Is ArchiMate linked to data model in a manner that changes in the data model? Would be.
How do you spell DAS? I'll see if I can see it in the chat window. Do I have access to the chat window?
You should. It was a question to everyone.
Okay, here we go. I'll look at. Oh, to the data model. I see in a manner that changes in the data model would be cascaded into Archie. Well, first of all, the language is. You're talking about, well, in the Archie tool itself, you could, so the answer is that those changes would either be manual or scripted. Like I said, Archie is a single language tool. If you wanted to get I'm sure that there are commercial offerings that offer both Archie and ERD. In fact, I'm aware of at least one. But the answer is Archie imports and exports data in a few formats, the model file format and other things, but it doesn't have that round trip capability built in. You'd have to either do it manually or script it.
Excellent, thank you. That brings us to the end of the webinar as we're running out of time. So thank you to everyone for attending. As a thank you for taking the time to tune into the webinar today. ER Principals are offering all attendees a $100 money back offer when you register for an upcoming ArchiMate training course. Details on this offer will be emailed out to you all shortly, along with resource links that were included in the presentation. If you've submitted a question that hasn't been answered during this session, we will endeavour to get back to you via email with the response to your question. So thank you to Iva for presenting such a valuable information, and thank you to everyone for attending. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.